Good morning, everyone. I'm Dominique Ghazar, and I'm part of the regional sustainability team at HSBC Bank for the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey. Some housekeeping for the session. If you have any questions, please send them through the chat box. You are welcome as well to share any comments you might have, and we will try to share them during the session. I am very delighted to be here today interviewing or actually celebrating the pathway of not only a very special and successful woman, but my own boss. When I've been requested to lead this session, I was initially a little bit hesitant and tried to escape, but I realized after that I was part of this journey. I was there for 7 years, watching her paving her pathway to the boardroom. We sometimes look at at the success of others and think they were lucky. They were at the right place, on the right time, and so on and so forth. While probably this might be the case, I can assure you that being in the right place is not enough. There is much more behind the scenes that we don't see or realize. I will not go there. I am sure that you will want to hear from her directly. However, watching her grow was absolutely a pleasure because she didn't grow alone. She ensured everyone around her grew along the way with her, myself too. I'm probably a little bit emotional, but this is very true. Sabrin is currently the regional head of sustainability for the bank and the region. And in addition to providing strategic advisory to both the bank and high-level government-led stakeholder groups, she sits on the board of the directors of the Emirates Green Building Council and is a board advisor for both Injaz Al Arab and the Emirates Foundation. She holds a Master in Sustainability Leadership from the University of Cambridge and a Master's in Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of Sydney, specializing in peace and business. Sabrin was named one of Australia's brightest young minds in 2008, awarded the Distinguished Alumni Service Award from Macquarie University in 2011, and nominated for Young Australian of the Year in 2015. Sabrin is married and has a beautiful 6-year-old son, Zavi, with whom I love playing with whenever possible. Sabrin, thank you for being with us today and for taking the time to share your journey. I would like to go back to 2014, 6 years ago, when you came back from your maternity leave and took over the sustainability department. How did you manage to balance your personal and professional life?
Thank you very much, Dominique. And good morning, good afternoon to all of our audience around the Middle East and hopefully around the globe. I think it's been an absolutely fantastic day and a half of discussions and insights. And I think it's an absolute privilege to share the screen and the stage with so many inspiring people. If I start with perhaps the question you posed to me, Dominique, around how to balance, I think that is the million-dollar question that many women and men still struggle with, to be honest. And in my opinion, balance is really a relative term, and it does shift week to week, sometimes even daily. It might look different on a different day. And in my personal opinion, I think work-life balance was much easier to manage before I became a mother. But becoming a mother gave me a lot more discipline around how I wanted to lead my own life. The first few months after I returned from maternity leave were honestly a huge struggle for me. I was still a new mother in many ways, and I was away from all of my family in Australia. And I was also fighting the guilt that many of us feel when we do leave our children behind and come into the office. But I think having a very flexible working environment, which allowed me to work from home as I needed, really allowed me to be almost two things at once. I didn't have to choose if that day I was going to be a mother or a professional. I could very seamlessly, wear different hats, which I think was probably what kept my sanity. But also I've learned over time to ask for help and also to accept help, and really share the parenting journey with my husband as an equal. Over the last few years, it's been a huge learning curve because we've realized what each other's strengths are, and to actually focus on strengths and not weaknesses, or development points. And I think that's really allowed us to enjoy the parenting journey as well as the working journey a lot more. And over the last few months with COVID and the closures of schools, and working from home on an ongoing basis, I think really tested our partnership, our theories around leaning into each other's strengths. And here we are, we're still standing and we're still smiling. Today's one of my first days back in the office, and my husband's at home with my son. So yeah, balance is all about what you make it and how much time you are willing to really invest into making sure that it's right for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing this. And I think COVID made us all realize the strengths of each other, especially in the family. You already had in mind career aspirations. Could you tell us what they were and how you managed to achieve them?
Absolutely. So I think when I was in university and even before that, I may not have had a clear path as to what I wanted to achieve as an end goal, but I knew from a very young age that I really wanted to create positive impact. And if you look at my background and where I've worked, it's very strange and almost unlikely that I would end up working in a bank. But the reason why I'm here, to be honest, is because HSBC has given me the most amazing platform to create lasting positive impact through supporting programs such as Diversity on Board, or helping integrate sustainability and ESG strategy and principles into the world's largest bank, and having the opportunity and the privilege to work with and lead, in my opinion, the most talented team on sustainability here in the Middle East. And some of the groundbreaking work that we do together, Dominique, as you know, we work on food and water security projects, employment, opportunities for marginalized communities or for refugees, or even creating new banking products to promote financial inclusion. I mean, all of this makes me and us immensely proud of the legacy that we have the honor to create every day. So for me, career aspirations is really not something that is front of mind, but it's incredibly important what I'm able to do and how my career develops on a daily basis. So the three things that I'm always looking for is flexibility, passion, and like-minded people. So if I'm able to tap into that and work with those parameters daily, I think I've achieved what I wanted to.
Absolutely. And I think we've heard all of those skills in the previous session today. And the passion is very close to my heart because I truly believe that with passion, you can achieve so many things.
Absolutely.
The next question is actually about bias. We know that there are conscious bias, unconscious bias. And could you tell us how they affected you in a way? Could you share an example of how this might have been an issue in your journey?
Absolutely. So as you mentioned earlier, I took over this role soon after I returned from maternity leave. And by many standards, I was fairly young. In fact, I was one of the youngest in many of the leadership teams here at HSBC that I'm a part of. And a large part of my role, heading this department for the Middle East, North Africa and Turkey, is to work with governmental bodies, multilateral agencies, and with very senior leadership across many organizations. And this initially was something that I found quite challenging, because when I would walk into these meetings, perhaps looking the way I do, I often felt that I was on the back foot because there was a preconceived notion by many of these people of who I was or what I was able to achieve or deliver. And that was quite challenging for me because I come from a very fiercely meritocratic organization here at HSBC, where perhaps I am shielded at times from the biases that may be prevalent, in other environments. And to this day, I'm still oftentimes the only female in the meeting. But I've learned not to let that intimidate me, like many other speakers before me have said. It gives me an opportunity to surprise my stakeholders and also to build greater trust based on deliverables, outcomes, and abilities. And I think it's so important that we do celebrate the fact that we have intergenerational diversity, because while gender diversity is great, we need to ensure that we do have people who are at all levels and at all phases in their lives, and having that intergenerational approach, but also neurodiversity, a diversity in thinking, because that's the only way we will have effective boards or leadership teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that HSBC, when they launched the reverse mentoring, I think it was a great idea. It's just for older people to understand the young generation and vice versa as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
This takes me to my next question. What was your biggest barrier or barriers when you joined your first board?
Sure. So there's many, but if I am to be really frank and thinking back almost 6-7 years ago, when I did join my first board, my biggest barrier was myself and my self-belief. My first board position was for a regional NGO where I sat alongside CEOs of multinational companies, as well as many from Fortune 500. And that was quite daunting for somebody in their early 30s. And I remember very, very distinctly that the first few meetings, I was just very quiet. I would sit there observing dynamics, the personalities of the other board directors. And in the back of my mind, there was always this little voice doubting that whatever opinion I had may actually not be valid. I mean, at the end of the day, what did I know? I was only at the start of this journey. But in hindsight, I'm actually glad that I took that time to observe and reflect, because it gave me that opportunity to realize that I actually did bring something very different to the table. In my past roles, I've worked in non-profit organizations, I've worked for-profit, government agencies, and academia. So I had a lot of variety in which I could draw upon. But most importantly, I was one of the only few people who had actually worked in a non-profit organization that was sitting on the board. And therefore, I actually had that inner understanding of the challenges that they may face, whether it be fundraising or talent retention and management. And whilst I may not have been a seasoned CEO with 30 years experience, I was selected for a purpose. And unless I was able to overcome my own mental barriers, I couldn't serve my purpose. So I think that realization is what really triggered me to start being a lot more open, a little bit more vocal, and to value my opinion a lot more.
Amazing. I still remember those days when you were passing. It's like, I have a board meeting, which is like kind of new to you as well, and your expression was all over the place.
Absolutely.
Which skills did you have to develop in order to ensure you were heard in a boardroom setting?
Look, I think there's such a variety of skill sets, right? And it's almost like a toolkit or a toolbox you need to have, and you need to pull different skills at different times. And as many other speakers have mentioned, including Her Highness, effective listening is something that's very, very key, and it's key to learning. But also, I think what's helped me a lot is the ability to understand the organizational dynamics and the power relationships that exist. I think those sort of empathetic skill sets allow you to perhaps see the story behind the scenes. Because when it comes to many board meetings, you see what they want you to see, right? You see the best examples, the best case scenario. But very often, you need to peel back the layers to perhaps see what the real challenges may be. I think those skill sets are useful, but I would also want to focus on some productive practices that really assist and help when it comes to being taken seriously and having a really viable voice at the table. So I've taken the time personally to really understand the operational aspects, the inner workings, the financials, the risk management frameworks of the organizations that I serve on boards for. And that really feeds into really solid board preparation. So prior to a meeting, take the time to digest the board pack and be confident in asking for help where you may not understand. And to help me develop into an effective board director, I've also actually reached out to colleagues and other people that I admire for mentorship and guidance, sometimes to even on how do I navigate that difficult situations. Because I want to, and I think what's important on this front is to really emphasize the importance of a culture of inclusiveness in boards, because there are responsibilities on both sides. So whilst diversity can sometimes be perceived as a numbers game, how many females do you have on your board, or what is your percentage? Inclusiveness is really about how you make those numbers count. So there's no point having females on the board if we are not included in the discussion. So that there is a responsibility for a board chairman to ensure that it is a very open dialogue, but also there is responsibility on women as well to ensure that your voice is heard and you use your position in a way that matters. So those are the things that I would absolutely promote and to anybody who's looking to serve on a board.
Very much true. Very much true. We have actually a comment, always so proud of you, Sabrin. It's actually from Naveen.
Thank you.
Tell us about your support system. You just mentioned it. How was it built? Was it organic, or did you have to build it along the way?
I think it's a combination of both, right? I'm blessed that I have an absolutely amazing support system, personally and professionally. And I think some have built, almost blossomed organically, especially in the professional sense, as I encounter people who have the same value set as I do. And that to me is very, very important, because they understand perhaps my way of thinking and my way of approaching a certain problem or an issue. And also I've made some conscious effort to also involve myself in different networks where there might be like-minded people, such as our gender network at HSBC called Balance, where colleagues really understand the critical nature of gender diversity, but we also have exposure to colleagues at a senior level, at people who are starting in their careers, and you just get that rich dialogue and that rich support sometimes. And another thing is that I believe my support network changes quite often as I face new and different challenges. I've learned to draw on different people because not all of our paths are the same. And so you need to be able to identify, what challenge might be ahead, where do you need that support, and who could bring that support. Externally, I also talk a lot to my peers. I still keep in touch with a lot of my university friends, people who work in different sectors, because sometimes it can be very overwhelming, the challenges we may face in the financial sector. But then speaking to others, you realize, hey, actually, it might be very, very similar in another sector, and we shouldn't let that overwhelm ourselves. And also when it comes to my friends, I've kept a very, very small group of friends who are like family, because I've found that keeping your circle small allows you to manage your energy levels a lot better, and it allows you to form just deeper, more meaningful bonds. So yeah, I'm blessed, but I think it does require constant effort and input from your side to make sure that you are giving as much as you're getting.
Absolutely. We have so many questions coming in. However, we will keep them till the end, and then you can answer them. What would be one message you would like to leave the audience with?
I think it comes down to reinforcement of the message. Please don't forget that women constitute more than half the global population. And if we are serious about equality and an equitable place for everyone, women must participate at all levels of the decision-making progress and process, whether it's governments, within businesses, in the private sector, or during policy dialogues. It's abundantly clear that there's a very, very solid commercial and economic imperative for gender diversity. Investors, clients, everyone I speak to, there is not a single person who doesn't understand the case for diversity and how critical it is and how profitable it can be. And of course, it is the right thing to do. So the one message I think that I would leave anybody who's listening today with is that we have a rightful place at the table. So draw up your chair to the table and make sure that your voice is heard. There's nothing stopping us now.
What a great message to be left with. Thank you, Sabrin, for taking us through your journey. We have some questions.
Sure.
The first one is from Sausan. What steps can companies take to move diversity beyond numbers? I think you spoke already about some of the key elements.
Absolutely. So there's a variety of, I guess, hard and soft measures, right? So many organizations, especially large multinationals and listed companies, absolutely have, targets for mid and senior level and so forth. And whilst maybe we don't want it to be a numbers game, at times you do need that push. And then you have the support system underneath that. So you have talent development programs, you have flexible work arrangements, you have parental leave. It's not just about maternity leave, it's about parental leave. How do you create that sort of, equitable workplace for men and women, especially when they are perhaps hitting an age or a position where balancing family and professional lives can be difficult. So I think those are some of the examples I've seen. They have been effective. There's still a long way to go. But I think at least we're having these discussions and we actually are now reporting on it publicly. So that's the, many investors actually want to see, what are your metrics? How are you delivering on that? Why aren't you delivering on it? Because it says a lot about the viability of an organization if you're unable to have diversity across all levels.
Absolutely. And effectively, it ties very well with the next question that we have, that in previous sessions, we learned that Goldman Sachs has adopted the requirement of having a female board member when investing. It is great to see that HSBC is very meritocratic and equal organization, but has it considered adopting a similar requirement for its investments?
And the question is, yes, we are on the way to doing that. And there's actually, I would say, an area of focus that we have, which is called gender lens financing. And this was launched about 18 months ago under our global banking division. And it's really about promoting and encouraging the organizations that we bank, that we offer credit facilities to ensure that they do have practices in place to support their female workplace. So some of the things that we have that I've actually spoken about around maternity policies, parental policies, around whistleblowing, support to working parents. These are some of the metrics we will ask questions on prior to making an investment or financial decision on. It really is a learning journey, and it fits in so well with sustainability and our overall focus, because I think what we've seen is climate has taken a huge front seat over the last few years, and it's something that people understand quite well. But perhaps what isn't understood as coherently across different markets is the social element. And Dom, you and I discuss this all the time. What does it mean, when we talk about human rights? What does it mean when we talk about gender diversity? It may look different in different markets, but the underlying principles are around support structures, because support structures are the ones that allow somebody to climb up. And if an organization is unable to actually create that supportive environment, it actually says a lot about the resilience and the viability of that organization for the future.
Absolutely. And as you said, and you know my opinion as well, Sab, I think whatever related to climate change and environment is easily actually to measure. However, on the social aspect, it's really very difficult to measure, especially when we speak about employability or empowerment and stuff like this. Absolutely. So hopefully soon we'll find the right framework and everything goes as expected and as we are working towards. Thank you so much for joining the session. Thank you all for attending the session as well. I am sure we are leaving you inspired and empowered by a story of a young woman who made her pathway a success and who I'm sure will dedicate time to support others achieve their ambitions. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.